Every Friday for the past few weeks, I've developed a ritual. I'll watch an episode of The Mandalorian and Star Trek Discovery back to back. And boy, does it really provide some insights when watching them in this manner. I've mostly held my tongue about the state of these two sci-fi franchises. In spite of the corporate executives, shareholders, and producers, whatever they think about their money-making potential, Star Trek and Star Wars are now cultural treasures. Star Wars touches us at the subliminal level. The nature of the human psyche is loaded with mythological archetypes and themes that Star Wars is able to recreate in a space opera setting. Star Wars is meant to be a hero's quest where the characters struggle and fight to define themselves and evolve. Star Trek is a different animal, and it cannot really do what Star Wars does. Star Trek is about exploring the nature of humanity, acknowledging our darkness in the current times, but telling us we can evolve beyond this. It is inherently optimistic, and it has inspired many young people to become scientists, engineers, and explorers. At least it certainly used to. I've already been kind of critical of modern Star Wars in my video comparing the sequel trilogies to the expanded universe, the old expanded universe, and why, for me, the new Star Wars movies are not canon. The good news about this is that some people in charge of the Star Wars franchise are capable of learning from their mistakes, and new producers have been put to good use. Yes, I'm talking to you, Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni. Now, I've not been particularly critical of Star Trek in recent years because in my youth, Star Trek has taught me to be relentlessly optimistic. I've always held hope that Star Trek will get better. Star Trek Discovery has been around for 3 years, and now that I'm watching The Mandalorian and Discovery side by side, the contrast is stark indeed. I will get to the root reason of why this is towards the end of this video, but let's start our critical review on the most basic level, the special effects and cinematography, and drill down to the deeper aspects such as character and story a bit later. Let's first give credit where credit is due. The cinematography and special effects of both of these series are pretty good. I have to admit though, Discovery's settings and artistry are very pleasing to the eye. I do not care for the excessive use of holograms, or what did they call it, interactive matter? I don't remember. And I really don't care for the starship designs at all. The space scenes are shot in a beautiful way, and the use of action is pretty good. It also really looks expensively produced because it is. The Mandalorian doesn't look like it's on quite the budget in comparison, at least Season 1 did not. Its aliens also do not seem to be as real as Star Trek's. They're clearly costumes. But wait, that's not quite a criticism, because the truly alien characters we get in Discovery are Saru and the Saurian crew member, who seems to be CG. Now these two characters compared to things like Ugnaughts, Trandoshans, the frog alien, and above all Baby Yoda, don't even compare in their exotically creative nature and cuteness. Now the ships and ship designs in The Mandalorian look absolutely fantastic. They are all true to canon, recognizable and memorable. The Discovery itself, on the other hand, is not really regarded as a particularly likable ship design. Season 1 and Season 2 of Discovery deviated from ship design canon, especially with Klingons, for no apparent reason. And in Season 3 we get things like Bookship, which looks like, well, honestly, I don't know. It's a design that is so indistinctive that I can't remember enough to tell you what it looks like. To me, the ships are characters in and of themselves. They are mascots of the characters that use them. Spaceships are imbued with a kind of spirit. Yes, I truly believe that starships have a soul. Now onto some characters. Historically, both sci-fi universes have characters that are so strong and powerful that they are written into our memories in a way that's impossible to forget. Most importantly, the protagonists were extremely likable. We wanted to be in the room with these people if we could. We admire them, aspire to be like them, and really want them to succeed. Even though the main character in The Mandalorian is a ruthless killer, inside that hard armor is a gentle softy. He achieves this likability without removing his helmet, with no overacting whatsoever, and with very little emotions. He builds a subliminal kind of rapport with the audience. The main character in Discovery, Michael Burnham, is kind of the opposite of this. I honestly feel like I'm being assaulted with emotion, as if I'm being pressured to play along. But why? I haven't yet been given enough reason to care as much as she apparently does about the situation. I'm not sure if it is the actress or the director, but the overacting is off the chart. And I'm telling you, in almost every episode, we get a cry from Michael Burnham. She cries a lot, and I honestly cannot tell you if I even like or dislike Michael, because there's too much emotional noise to really get a handle on this character. Saru is somewhat likable, however he seems to be in a never-ending state of struggle to compete with great captains such as Giorgio or Pike, and seems to always be in competition with Burnham. So victimized by Burnham's insubordinate antics, he's made to seem weak. Tilly, although annoying, is somewhat likable, I suppose. This is a character, kind of like Barclay from the older Star Trek, that should be growing out of her hesitation, and hopefully she will, which could make her probably the most likable character in the cast. Only it hasn't happened yet. Okay, it's about time we tackled the gay representation issue here. Having gay representation in Star Trek has been a long time coming, and I'm really glad that there is some. However, I'm disappointed with this particular gay representation. Stamets is rude, sensitive, sassy, and generally a stick in the mud. The impetus is that we're supposed to find him endearingly funny and cute. He most certainly is not. His boyfriend, Hugh, is bland and boring. He's certainly no McCoy, Crusher, Pulaski, or Phlox. But their relationship is also extremely boring with absolutely no chemistry whatsoever. Now I'm qualified to speak about this because I am gay, although I don't like the label, mainly because the label comes with stereotypes. And these two gay men represent the stereotypical gay man. And at least half of gay or bisexual men are absolutely nothing like this. It's as if the producers of Star Trek decided they needed to check the gay box, so they went down and found some stereotypical gays and gave them a job here. What I would have found a lot more refreshing is that you had one slightly effeminate gay man, maybe even more effeminate than either of these two, and one man that was not effeminate at all and was absolutely indistinguishable from anyone else. On that note, you see what's going on right here between these two? This seems to be a far more interesting and believable matchup. Okay, back to The Mandalorian. There is no such diversified representation in The Mandalorian as there is in Star Trek. And you know what? Star Wars can get away with that. Star Wars is not a metaphor for the potential of our current civilization. However, most of the people that The Mandalorian interacts with are extremely likable and put a smile on my face every time they show up in a scene. They don't try to push any emotions on you. You either feel them or you don't. My reactions to them are incidental and involuntary, not fake. If I laugh or feel sad or angry about these characters, it's real. There's also some very fine actors involved. I was thrilled to see Kathy Sackhoff as Bo-Katan. She was great as Starbuck in Battlestar Galactica. Although in BSG she was an emotional basket case, her acting was sharp and believable. I was worried that she might overact in The Mandalorian. She is really quite cool and measured in her interactions, but even the villains are highly interesting and likable. It finally hit me why Moff Gideon is a compelling villain. It's frickin' Gustavo Fring from Breaking Bad. No wonder that guy was familiar. I've often wondered what an interaction between Gustavo Fring and, say, Grand Admiral Thrawn would be like. Both cool, calculating, and formidable villains. Maybe we'll get to see this someday. You see what's happening here? Since us Star Wars fans are being excited by the show in all the right ways, we can't wait to see what comes next. In contrast, the only character in Discovery that is truly, unequivocally likable was Captain Pike. Now, as far as the plots and writing in these two, there is no comparison. The Mandalorian dominates. Now, there are two reasons for this. One is that The Mandalorian is much more episodic than Discovery. Discovery has deviated from traditional Star Trek in yet another way. Each season is one long story arc, and each episode is an integral part of that story arc. Which means if there are plot holes or bad premises in the story arc, it poisons all the episodes involved in that season. Not to say that Star Trek occasionally in the past had some terrible episodes. The next week, a good episode often more than made up for it, as it was all a self-contained story. Now, they tried story arcs in Star Trek with Star Trek Enterprise. Well, guess what? That series failed. The way they did it right was with the Dominion War in Deep Space Nine. Deep Space Nine was still highly episodic in nature. It still had a light story arc. The Mandalorian kind of emulates Deep Space Nine in this regard. Although there is a story arc that begins right away, it's very simple. Mando finds a Baby Yoda, he comes to care for Baby Yoda, he must survive and protect the child, and is tasked with finding Baby Yoda's home, which leaves plenty of creative room to go all over the Star Wars universe and have each episode tell a new and unique story. With The Mandalorian, as it used to be with traditional Star Trek, I have no idea what is about to happen, and it surprises us often, which is a delight. Now, there are many more stark contrasts I can make, but I need to come to a point soon. When I'm watching Discovery, each scene starts out kind of interesting, but it quickly gets bogged down with this kind of unbelievable emotional melodrama that has little to do with plot. I actually find myself fast forwarding through a lot of this melodrama so I can hurry it along to get to the actual plot point. By the end of each episode, I find myself annoyed and ultimately don't really care about the story or what's going to happen in the next episode. Now, maybe if it were episodic, I might, but in this case, I can't. Even though the series seems to be trying to convince me that I really should. When I'm watching The Mandalorian, I'm riveted on the edge of my seat at all times. I anticipate with delight what Baby Yoda will do next, what kind of trouble these people will get into, and what amazingly weird and interesting character is going to show up. Because of this, I am incapable of skipping any second of a Mandalorian episode. Now, let's get to the crux of the matter and the point of this video. Why is there such a stark contrast between The Mandalorian and Star Trek Discovery? One seems on point, the other seems off. Sometimes really off, and sometimes kinda off, but always off. Well, it has everything to do with who is a fan of their respective franchises, namely the producers. The producers of The Mandalorian are Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni. The executive producer of Star Trek Discovery and all Star Trek content for the past few years is Alex Kurtzman. I only know that Jon Favreau is a Star Wars fan, a pretty avid Star Wars fan. I don't really know to what extent though. Dave Filoni, however, is a level 10 geek when it comes to Star Wars. The man even has a bust of Plo Koon in his possession. It is clear he is very familiar with the expanded Star Wars universe, which is all the content that was decanonized when Disney bought the franchise, and he has resurrected a lot of it. I will maintain that at least in Filoni's case, there's a difference between resurrecting content and stealing it. He has resurrected it with great care and respect. Filoni has been mentored by George Lucas, and his fandom has allowed him to vindicate himself with the successful production of the Clone Wars animated series and the Rebels animated series. This man is not just a fan, he loves Star Wars. He is passionate, and he understands what strikes a chord with the fans by his very nature. Alex Kurtzman co-produced the Star Trek 2009 film, right alongside J.J. Abrams, and produced the sequel, Star Trek Into Darkness, ending a 10-year drought of Star Trek content. Although he may claim to be a fan now, he certainly did not start out as one, nor did J.J. Abrams, and both would tell you that themselves. Now, I'm not going to demonize Alex Kurtzman in this video. There's plenty of other YouTubers who have done that. After all, Kurtzman is a person like you and I. But unlike David Filoni, I'm really uncertain about Kurtzman's true motivations or circumstances in his position. He replaced the original intended producer of Discovery in the very beginning, which was Bryan Fuller, who is a shameless Star Trek geek, and Fuller had also done work on Star Trek Voyager and Deep Space Nine. If you look at Bryan Fuller's past work, such as Hannibal, you'll find that it is far more cerebral and intellectual than what Kurtzman produces, for better or worse. For all I know, Fuller could have been a disaster for Star Trek. The details of this replacement are a mystery, but I'm skeptical though. Star Trek is by its nature intellectual, and so is Fuller. I would think that a true fan with Fuller's production experience wouldn't have screwed it up. But one thing is for sure, Alex Kurtzman's work is very flashy indeed, almost more visually flashy and melodramatic than what Fuller would have brought us. I do wonder if Kurtzman had been a producer of a more flashy drama, such as maybe some DC Universe stuff or action or superhero stuff, how it would have turned out. Now, a hardcore Star Trek fan, the type that is inspired to be an engineer, a scientist, etc., is inherently intellectual and cerebral. Star Trek is far closer to science fiction than Star Wars. Indeed, the original series had science consultants on board to, make it something we could really believe is possible in humanity's future. Not being a fan of a franchise is not always a disqualifier. After all, Nicholas Meyer was not a fan. He directed 2 of the most highly regarded Star Trek films in franchise history. But he also put in the legwork with great care and watched every Star Trek episode before going to work on Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. And it shows. If you're not a fan of a franchise or don't care to empathize with them from their point of view, then you're going to produce it in the only way you know how, and that is by emulating other things that are currently successful that you might be a bigger fan of. The first thing that comes to mind in this regard is Game of Thrones. In fact, Alex Kurtzman has said that if people were willing to pay for Game of Thrones and follow a long seasonal story arc, then so can Star Trek, and Star Trek would be successful. Which would explain the dark and painful themes that keep recurring in Kurtzman's Star Trek. But to a Star Trek fan, to say that Star Trek is anything like Game of Thrones is laughable. I suspect they have also looked at the first season of The Mandalorian and tried to integrate a rogue theme in Season 3 of Discovery. This is based on the nature of the galaxy in this era of Star Trek, which is very much like the outer rim of the Star Wars galaxy. Star Trek can never emulate Star Wars without looking stupid or fake. My point is, the only people who can really produce something of great quality, especially cultural treasures such as Star Wars and Star Trek, are people who are totally passionate about the product. In fact, with all things in life, to do anything worthwhile, you must do it with heart. Thank you for watching, Space Friends. Until next time.